It's my distinct pleasure to welcome Manoj Kulkarni, CEO of RealizeIt. For folks that maybe don't have a sense of RealizeIt and sort of your brilliant sort of work in the adaptive learning space, maybe we could open with a little bit of that as we get into some topics.
Absolutely. So thank you, Todd. It's always a pleasure to be talking to friends. That's one of the advantages you get by coming over here.
No doubt.
In RealizeIt, we are doing some of that as well. For over a decade now, we've been in the space of trying to understand how to implement and adopt technology to be able to transform the process of training and learning more from the standpoint of individualizing it and personalizing learning towards serving a better performance, whether it is for the organization or whether it is for the individual, and making that happen through AI and adaptivity is what we've been working on, and in the space of workforce, that's exactly what it's translating in terms of an ROI associated with learning for large organizations and small organizations as well.
Folks trying to wrap their heads around sort of multiple definitions of what adaptive learning is, and meeting that at different stages from deeply intelligent AI based on one side to just sort of thinking about sort of building of individual curriculum and trying to personalize that, and maybe share a little bit, because I think that's brilliant to think about it on that continuum.
I mean, the notion of adaptive learning is not new.
That's right, for folks that have been in this space for a while.
Exactly, so every good teacher has been adaptive, and I think that is essentially what we started out with as well. Because our genesis has been with teachers, as teachers and researchers, and what we were trying to do is really understand how to emulate the best teaching capabilities for every student. So how does the best teacher show up for every student, every learner is the question, right? And that's what adaptive learning is all about. So in the realm of adaptive learning, though, there are so many flavors associated with it. As with anything that is new, you can have a lot of definitions associated with it. So on one hand, you can have adaptive learning that's as simple as somebody coding rules on if then else to say, or trying to, as long as it's not, I say this, as long as it's not one size fits all, you can claim it to be adaptive, right? So the question is, what adapts? How often does it adapt? What are the bases for the adaptivity? How much does that adaptivity scale? So on one hand, you can have basic stuff, which is more rules-based stuff to do that, and you can advance that into something that's more static rules that are written to be able to segment students into different categories to know how to be able to service them, all the way to now where we are the space in, which is the use of machine learning and AI, to be able to understand how to adapt based on the profile of the learner, the context of the learner.
Unique attributes of them, sort of the job role and function.
But I think a big piece of what adaptivity has to really do in terms of a job in workforce learning is really to be able to understand how to improve individual engagement and individual performance. Right?
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about scale? Because this is something I think you all are doing brilliantly that we're trying to address as well. We take the approach of more of the cohort-based, and how can you take sort of the legacy classroom model and now all of a sudden scale that with really diverse cohorts in a digital setting where it's not tens or 20s, it's hundreds or thousands.
So when we talk about scale, I mean, it's really around the notion of how do you individualize that scale? I mean, if you are an organization that has 40, 50,000, 100,000 people remotely distributed, and whether you are media, entertainment, manufacturing, financial services, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to be able to reach those people where they are. You have to be able to understand exactly what they need at the moment. You have to be able to serve them the way they want to be served, which is in the flow of work. All moments of learning, all opportunities of learning, all modalities of learning, and individualizing it for each one of them to be able to do that. So I think that's really what we talk about scale, right? Everybody needs a learning GPS.
Which I love. Right? I love that analogy. It's not the Netflix of learning, which so many have tried to co-opt.
Yeah, it's really the learning GPS, and you need to provide everyone to be able to make that happen.
I think the other piece that, Manoj, I know we wrestle with a lot, and I think many practitioners and sort of business leaders in the space are the measurement side of it. How do you really get to that side of, and I think you've done some brilliant work on, I think it was 4 different dimensions that you spoke about in terms of adaptive learning and thinking about them. Maybe I'd love to have you play forward a couple of those.
Yeah, so I think the dimensions that are really important. So there's the aspect of understanding the measurement that's needed to drive good individualization. And then there is the aspect of measurement that's really required to be able to understand the impact of adaptivity or personalization associated with it. So the impact of adaptivity is around 4 dimensions. How effective can it be? How efficient can it make somebody's life? How relevant that's the
The
big
relevance
piece.
piece, no
It's
doubt.
if you an engagement has a big piece associated with
Time.
relevance. People don't have the time, they don't want to do it. And how agile is it, right? How quickly can it change to be able to do that? And really those are the 4 dimensions along which you can measure the impact of adaptive learning. But to be able to do the measurement about how to really help people, it's just like taking the analogy of the GPS. You've got to be constantly
Constant
observing.
assessment. It can't be just
exactly.
a course analysis at the very end of an
And
email.
it's not one way of assessing people, right? It has to be all the ways that people can be assessed and evaluated. So it can be machine graded, it can be through the manager, it can be self-assessed, it can be through a peer graded associated with that. See, really the whole notion of performance evaluation happening in a silo and learning happening in a silo has to go away, and they have to blend together to be able to make that happen.
No, and I think we're sort of many seen this, certainly a lot of our clients, this idea of learning kind of being not subsumed, but getting closer and closer to talent and being about that entire life
So
cycle.
really it is about talent,
Yes.
ultimately, right? The learning and is all about talent and talent performance.
And not done in isolation.
Yeah,
on that
exactly.
side.
And you guys do that. I mean, you know that. We're all of the same ilk in terms of how to really drive that stuff. What we're doing is bringing a learning model and a technology to be able to support that.
Any sort of closing words of wisdom or sort of big takeaways that you would sort of offer to people as we have about a day and a half left of
I
the
think,
event today?
Look, I think I tell a lot of people who come even at the booth and we're talking to a lot of people, it's like, first of all, you have to look at things from a different mindset, right? People come to us about the technology and we say, it's not the technology, it's the problem that you're trying to solve. If you don't understand the problem,
throwing technology at it needlessly is
So somebody asked me yesterday saying, how do I know it's the best technology? And I said, you don't really need the best technology, you need the right technology. Start with the end in mind and work towards what you really need. Think beyond the LMS.
Yes.
Think beyond the LXP, think beyond certain things that are more safe for us to kind of do that. And experiment. Start small. In some places, you don't have to make a
boil
big
the
bet.
ocean out of it.
Yeah, you can grow your way into but future-proof your investments that you're making right now, because the investment you're making right now is for the next 5 to 6 years, for the next 5 to 7 years. And AI and data science-driven, learning science-driven learning is going to be there. So get prepared for that and make that happen right now.
No, brilliant. Some wonderful words of wisdom. Manoj Kulkarni, can't thank you enough for spending a little bit of time with us today.
Thank you very much, Todd. It was a pleasure. Likewise.
Brilliant.
Great.